The man who massacred 77 people in Norway last summer says he is not guilty and will not recognise the legitimacy of the court. Anders Behring Breivik made a far-right salute as he arrived for the start of his 10-week trial this morning. The 33-year-old, who has admitted planting a bomb in Oslo before going on to shoot people at a summer camp on Utoya Island last July, maintains the killings were necessary. The court will have to decide whether to admit him to a psychiatric hospital or send him to jail.
I do not recognize the Norwegian court. You've gotten your mandate from political parties who support multiculturalism.
Well, Breivik is accused of terrorism. He's admitted the killings, but maintains, he says, they were necessary.
Well, Mr. Breivik, now you have heard the national prosecutor read the charges against you, and you've had time ahead of this to assess this. So now I will ask you, do you plead guilty completely or in part to these charges? I acknowledge the acts, but I do not plead guilty, and I claim that I was doing it in self-defense.
Utoya, your correspondent, Robert Nisbet, has been listening to all the trials so far. And Robert, a painstaking description of the atrocities he carried out.
Painstaking and painful to listen to, not just for, of course, the families of those victims, as each one of them and the injuries that they suffer was read out to the court, and it took well over an hour just to document what happened on the island of Utoya, which I think was a fairly graphic representation of the scale of this tragedy. After that happened, then the prosecution started setting out some kind of background to Breivik's life, explaining where this extremism had come from. And I should point out, just before we go to a clip of the prosecutor, that within the last few minutes we understand from Michelle Clifford, our correspondent inside the court, that Anders Breivik started showing emotion for the first time. That while a 12-minute propaganda video was playing, there were tears in his eyes. He was trying to choke back his emotion because, it has to be said, while they were reading out the catalogue of his alleged crimes, he was absolutely impassive, but it seems that that facade has finally cracked. But prosecutors divided up his life to explain a little bit about where his extremist views came from, and they suggest that those can be traced to a decade ago.